I started with a background on the author, Albert Camus, and he lived from 1913 to 1960. And he is originally from French Algeria, so that explains kind of the perspective that Marceau has on the area from the book, because the author lived there for quite a while. But he was interested in philosophy and attended school in France, and really tried to become very involved in the movement, and did not consider himself an existentialist. He actually considered himself an absurdist, which means that while existentialists believe that life has no meaning, absurdists believe that life is absurd, and there's no reason for anything that happens. It's just crazy, and it goes every which way, and so it's a little bit different from existentialism. And he believed in the total absence of hope, which is a quote from his work, The Myth of Sisyphus, which means that there is no, it kind of just goes back to the idea that there's no afterlife, there's no higher meaning, and that there's no hope for anything after this world. So it really is reflected in the novel. But for the background of the novel, it's set in the French Algeria in the mid-20th century during a time of extreme racism and conflict between the Arabs and the Frenchmen who lived in Algeria, which is a country in North Africa that was originally inhabited by the Arabs. And it really does parallel like almost kind of like the Europeans coming to America with the Native Americans, because it's like that was their land, but they were pushed off it, they were discriminated against, and they were not punished. And the white people were not really punished like you would think for like hurting the Native Americans as were the Frenchmen and the Arabs. So there's a lot of parallels between the conflict here and in other points in history. And the background of the novel focuses on our protagonist, Monsieur Marceau. And he's kind of a strange man, doesn't really, kind of goes through life very aloof and nonchalant about everything, and doesn't seem to care about his life at all. And it kind of explores the absurdity of the justice system of Algeria, given the very skewed trial when Marceau is punished, because he's not punished for killing an Arab. He's punished because he's more of a threat to society than anything else, and the prosecutor believes that he could potentially hurt other people, and he's not fit to be living. And the Arab is not even related into the trial. So that's part of the kind of absurdity of what went on in the Algerian courts that Marceau recognizes, but doesn't really do anything about because he doesn't care. He's an existentialist. And it also explores the absurdity of the world in which Marceau lives in. He sees many kind of absurd notions, such as Raymond's relationship with the Arab woman. How he really treats her horribly and even beats her, but he doesn't even get punished for it, like they said in the last presentation. It's like he goes down to the police station, the officer just lets him go. He's not even punished for hitting a woman because she was an Arab. He was let completely off the hook. And it's also I feel like Salamano's relationship with his dog is also a very absurd notion in The Stranger, because it's kind of parallels Raymond's relationship with the woman. It's like Salamano beats his dog and abuses it, but then he wonders why the dog won't come back, and he realizes that he really does miss it, even though he had abused it all of his life. And the last concept that I feel was a very absurd notion was life and death, and how Marceau doesn't care about life until his last moments, until he's realized that he's going to die. He doesn't know what's going to happen next, and he wants to be, he knows what he did is wrong, but he's scared, and he doesn't know what will happen after that. And I think that kind of, I think maybe he finally comes to grips, and maybe he starts to realize that maybe life does have meaning at the end of the book, but he took life, and so that's why he should be greeted with cries of hate as when he is sentenced to death. So, can you think of any other examples about absurdity in the novel that I didn't cover already?
The idea that you're supposed to be respectful at a funeral where Marceau, he's sitting there smoking, and it's so from his point of view, from what I'm hearing, it's absurd to think that being respectful would change anything. They're dead and they're gonna be buried, so why can't you smoke?
Gotcha. Any other ideas? Alright, so I found some quotes, and the first one is the benign indifference in the universe, which I think is a great quote because it kind of shows how, like, the world isn't different and how nothing matters, but the use of the word benign means it's not necessarily bad. It's like maybe, like, the world doesn't matter, it's not because, like, horrible things go on necessarily, it's just nothing happens. It doesn't ever matter. And this last quote, I really think is prevalent. It says, "I've been right, I was still right, I was always right. I passed my life in a certain way, and I might have passed it in a different way if I felt like it. What difference can they make to me? The deaths of others, or a mother's love, or his God, or the way a man decides to live, the fate he thinks he chooses, since one and the same fate was bound to choose not only me, but thousands of millions of privileged people who, like him, call themselves my brothers." And I think this book really sums up Mersaw's entire thinking about the novel by saying how, because he's kind of looking back and like how he lived his life, and if he could have done it differently, what would he have done? And how other people affected him, like the other people dying, his mother's love or God. He doesn't really like, maybe he's starting to think that, you know, maybe they do matter, maybe they don't, but they were in his life and they did affect how he lived it. And when he says like, or the way a man decides to live, he's kind of talking about fate and how saying that fate is chosen for you in everything you do. You can do anything you want basically, but it doesn't matter because there's nothing you can do about it. So, does anyone want to reflect on this quote and what they kind of interpret it as? I think it pretty much explains everything that he is feeling in the novel. Okay, so I have some questions. So, are there any more examples of existentialism that you can remember that I have not covered already? Or if you have your book with you, can you remember any specific quotes? Okay, do you believe that the stranger is more existential or observant? Do you think that one is more prevalent than the other? Penny?
I think that, I would say that it's more absurd because that's how he meant it to be. And I think that the differences are still kind of hazy for me, but I think that if he intended it to be an absurd novel, then that's probably it.
Yeah, I think, well, it's like kind of hard to like determine between the two, but I think when looking from Mersaw's point of view, it's definitely absurdist, in that everything he describes is kind of like, it makes sense when he describes it, how it would be absurd.
I definitely agree with them about the absurdity, but also I think at the end when he kind of reaches that enlightenment, when he's like, I'm gonna die eventually, I should just accept it, and he's finally found happiness, that's a very existential piece.
Zane, did you have your hand raised? Oh, okay. And can you kind of relate any of the beliefs that happened in the novel to your own life today? Do you see any examples today in society maybe?
Well, these are the call downs for today. Teachers were going to do announcements over the
Sorry, yeah, I have to do the announcements.
internet, so if you go to your email, pull that up, turn on your projectors. We need to see Alex Toddler, Justin Taylor, Jackie Steinerwald, Brendan Schlemacher, Harrison Young, John